हरि ओम। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। दृक् दृश्य विवेक, a very important concept in Advaita Vedanta, and equally well dealt by Patanjali Maharaj, is what is the matter under consideration for last few sessions. We saw what is drushya, that which is perceived as the external world. Drushya is all that is perceived, and the perceiver and the seer. Merely becoming a perceiver doesn't mean that is the end of it. The objects are perceived by the eyes. So eye is a perceiver of the objects. But what is perceived by the eye is further perceived by the antakarana. So antakarana then becomes the perceiver. So there is a chain of succession of perceivers till it comes to a point where there is a last perceiver. And the one which makes this perception possible is called seer and not the perceiver. The question comes, why he is not a perceiver? Why he is a seer? Why he is not a drashta? Why he is druk? The sunlight comes in the house and gets reflected by the mirror. Because of the reflection, we are able to see something on the wall. So something on the wall is perceived because of the mirror. But the mirror is a perceiver as far as wall is concerned. But the reason why the mirror has become the perceiver is because of the sunlight which is falling on it. That means the sun is the real source of this perception. But in case of mirror, it is the character of the mirror to reflect. So the mirror is in the role, bhumika of the perceiver. The sun has no business with perception. Whether the mirror is there, wall is there, something on the wall is there, it is immaterial for the sun. The fire is burning. You may go and boil water in it. You may not boil water in it. So the purpose of fire's existence is not for boiling the water. The fire has been utilized for boiling the water. That means the presence of fire, the presence of sun is by itself without any reason. There is no specific reason that can be attributed to sun, because it is just existing and giving light is its nature. There is no prayojana. It is utilized by many people. It is utilized by every single thing on the earth. That is utilization. But as far as sun is concerned, illumination, giving light is its nature. Similarly, in all the perceptions that we do, the one that enlightens the perception, yet it has no business in enlightening as a purpose, is called Druk, or the consciousness, or the Purusha, or the Chaitanya. Now, in this regard, it is important to know that some terminologies are used in a very confusing manner. For a studious person of Adhyatma, the clarity is very important here, because in Patanjali Yoga Shastra, consciousness is called as Drashta, while in Advaita Vedanta, Jiva is called as Drashta. So how do you reconcile it? The reconciliation is, it depends on the reference that you are trying to have. For example, when Drashta, Drushya and Darshan is there. Drashta, Drushya, Darshan. What is Darshan? What is seen? The process of seeing is Darshan. What is seen is Drushya. And the one who is seeing, or one who feels that I am seeing, is called Drashta. So Jiva is Drashta, the world is Drushya, and the process of seeing is Darshana. This is in Advaita Vedanta in reference to Drushta, Drushya, Darshan. In Yoga Shastra, everything is called Drushya, and the Drashta is not the Jiva, but the Purusha. That is why Rishis are called Mantra Drashta. Mantra Drashta means one who was able to see the mantra in its original form. Mantra Drashta. The word Drashta has come from Drushti. Now, whenever you are using Upadhi or the Jiva, then it is called as Drashta, Drushya, Darshana. For example, if it is Netrindriya Yoga, that through eyes you are seeing, then you become Drashta. If you're with the ears you are trying to hear, you become Shrota. If you are trying to use Buddhi, then you become Dhyata. If you are trying to use, let us say, feet, you become Ganta. In other words, Paridnyata or Aupadhika Saudhnya. Aupadhik means the one who has Upadhi. That means the Jiva. So from Jiva's standpoint, when you look at it, it becomes a Drashta is a Jiva. Drushya is what is to be seen. Darshan is the process of seeing. Drushta, Drushya, Darshana. Now in this, behind Drashta, there is Druk. Because Jiva is Drashta, behind that there is a consciousness which is called Druk. That is why it is called Druk Drushya Viveka. Druk Drushya Viveka was a very important spiritual grantha written by Swami Bharati Tirtha or Vidyaranya. There is a dispute amongst the author, but this is the same Vidyaranya who wrote Panchadashi, also wrote Vaksudha or Druk Drushya Viveka. Apart from the terminology, the purpose is very same. Who is seeing and who is making us able to see. Why this is important? Because we are not able to separate the seer, that is druk, from the drushya. We always get embedded in the drushya. Right now I'm talking to you with a firm conviction that I am speaking, and you all have a firm conviction that I am listening. Factually, neither I am talking nor you are listening. It is the consciousness in me which is speaking through the matter vesture or the prakriti or my deha, ashtadha prakriti, and your ears are making you possible to hear because of the consciousness in you. But this is the only theoretical analysis. We do not realize it at all. So deeply we are embedded in drushya. Now remember, if we look at our whole behavior, we are either drushya or darshaka. What is drushya? Anything that is being seen by others is called drushya. For example, you watch a movie. So movie is a drushya. But in our real life, if you deeply analyze and look at it, we are either in the role of a drushya or we are in the role of a darshaka. We have only two roles. We keep switching between these two roles. A classical example of one becoming drushya is these stupid heroes in the film industry. They are always attracting attention of everybody. They will try to decorate themselves. They will create styles. They are always in a different world because they want to attract the attention. When they walk on the street, people follow them. They cheer them. They are the matinee idols, as they call it. In this matinee idol business, in this film hero business, what you are trying to do, you have become a drushya and you want many darshakas to see you. So there is one role called drushya. Similarly, we are smaller heroes in our own way. In the office, when you want everybody to listen to you, you are trying to become a drushya because you want to be the center of attraction and you want everyone to see you, appreciate you, admire you, keep looking at you, keep pointing at you, keep admiring you. All this is because you want everyone to become darshaka and you want to become drushya. And the other role that we take is when we are not drushya, we are a darshaka, meaning the hero has come, we keep looking at him. You are seeing the spectacle, so you become darshaka. Drushya and darshaka, both are false roles. When you become witness to drushya and darshaka, you become drashta. Suppose you are interacting with somebody is trying to insult you and you are becoming angry, but simultaneously you are aware that he is speaking something nonsense because of which I am getting angry. I should not be getting angry. That means the one who is giving insults, the one who is receiving insult, they are interacting with each other, but there is somebody else who is watching this interaction, which is called as a pure witness. And the pure witness is called drashta. So now there are three roles: drushya, darshaka, and a witness called drashta. I'm sure everybody has observed in their life, when you find in your home your wife fighting with your own daughter or son, as a father, you keep watching them. You don't want to get part into it, but you see that the wife is at mistake because she scolded the daughter. The daughter is at mistake because she responded with very bad words. What is happening? You are not the part of the drushya or the darshaka. You are becoming a drashta. You are a witness. You are not speaking anything. So that is why the anger that is inflicted upon the mother or the daughter is not affecting you. You are able to watch that anger, but it doesn't affect you because you are not a part of it. Similarly, in every interaction that you do, if you are able to understand that the drushya is different and the darshak is different, I am neither of the two, I am the drashta or the witness, then what happens? The life becomes easier because you have withdrawn yourself from the whole interaction of drushya and the darshaka. So you have become drashta. Now, drashta, when you become, still you have an awareness that I am the witness. This awareness that I am the witness is nothing else but the Shuddha Ahankara. That is why you are still in the role of a Jiva, but working as a Drashta. Now imagine you are a witness to everything, yet you are not aware that you are a witness. That is called pure consciousness, Druk. And how will that happen? How will Drashta become Druk? When Drashta releases its awareness, that means its ahankara, that means its ability to know that I am witnessing it. So just remove the I and remain only witness. Now, when the I is removed, will witness be there? This is precisely what happens to the sun when he gives the light. Under that sunlight, some people are making food, some people are boiling water, some people are using that sunlight to torture somebody, some people are feeling very happy because it is coming in the winter as a very warm thing. None of this is creating any impact on the sun because the sun is not interested in knowing how his light is utilized, but being lightful is its nature. That is what the consciousness is all about. See, if that is the case, then comes the question, how can I become the sun and not the one who is enlightened by the sun? How can I not become drushya darshaka? That is the most hopeless situation, to become a drushya or the darshaka. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara, etc. is nothing else but the refined version of a darshaka. Yasha, Kirti, Satta, Sampatti, Pratishtha is a refined version of drushya. We don't want to become either drushya or we don't want to become the darshaka. We want to become drashta in the beginning, and then this drashta has to shade the upadhi of the jiva so that he can become druk. So in the sessions of the sutra seen earlier, we saw what is drushya, we saw what is a druk, and then comes the very important part of this discussion, that if we look at the whole discussions that we had, we saw the Vishesha, Avishesha, Linga, Alinga, etc. We saw those different types of samadhis. We saw the gross manifestation, then there is a tanmatra behind it, etc. Now, what is important is, amongst this plethora of the things that are there in the Jagata, what are the plethora of things? The Vishesha, that is Sthula, the Avishesha, that is Tanmatra, behind that there is a Ahankara, and behind that there is a Buddhi. So the last, as you go regress backward, as you go backward, the last thing which is close to the Purusha is Buddhi. For the Chaitanya, the closest thing to the Chaitanya is Buddhi. That is why in the evolution in Sankhya, if we see, from the Prakriti or the Pradhana, Mahat Tattva is the first Tattva. First, Mahat means the Buddhi of entire creation. And Buddhi means Buddhi of one person, Vyashti and Samashti. If Buddhi is the first manifestation, that means it is the closest thing to the consciousness or the Purusha. Why this is important? It is important because if you want to go close to somebody, you have to go to the closest possible place. Suppose there is a tree which is closest to the house that you are hunting. So then by going closer to the tree, you can be sure that now you are closer to the house. Similarly, If you want to know the Purusha, if you want to know the consciousness, if you want to enter the consciousness, the closest that you can get is up to Buddhi. And then post Buddhi, you will enter into consciousness, which is a separate exercise by itself. How do you go close to the Buddhi? The Buddhi is in actually in sattva guna, so the purest possible form. Buddhi is in a Shuddha Sattva Guna, purest possible form. So to reach to the Buddhi, moment the Buddhi is in purest possible Sattvic form, you have reached the Buddhi. That means if I am not closer to the Buddhi, I am not having Shuddha Sattvic Buddhi. What has happened to the Buddhi then? The Buddhi is polluted by other gunas, the Rajoguna and the Tamoguna. But if the Buddhi is Shuddha Sattvic, how it can get polluted by Rajogunas and Tamogunas? It gets covered by, it is a crystal which is pure, clean in color, pristine in purity, but it is covered by the clay or the mud. Now this covering is not of the Buddhi, but the covering has covered the Buddhi. So Rajoguna and Tamoguna covers the Buddhi so that its Shuddha Sattvic pure crystal nature is not perceived by us. Now why did this Rajoguna and Tamoguna came? Because of the Samskar or the Vasana. Why did the Vasana came? Because of the Samskar. Why did the Samskar came? Because of the Karma. Why did the Karma happen? Because of the wrong way of doing the Karma. So what is correction then? The correction has to start from the correcting the karma that I am doing, so that karma does not generate a samskar, so that samskar doesn't become a vasana, so that vasana, which is nothing else but tamu and rajogunatmak, will not cover the buddhi, so that the buddhi will not remain covered under these other gunas and will shine its own in its own form of Shuddha Sattvikata. If this is the process, then comes the question, the whole sadhana, irrespective of which marga you are in, the sadhana has to focus on first thing first. And first thing first is tamoguna, because that is the lowest and the most corrupting. So tamoguna, when you are trying to remove, you are trying to do what is called as chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi means purification of buddhi or purification of that crystal. Now for that chitta shuddhi, we have to do every act which will not create tamoguna. So anything that creates tamoguna, which is adharma, which is papam, has to be scrupulously avoided. You have to be extremely aware of it. So it starts right at the bottom. That is why Karma Yoga Vishishyate is the word used in Bhagavad Gita. The whole concept of Karma Yoga is basically focused on removing these gunas so that you go more towards the Sattva Guna. The ultimate message is to become Nistraigunyu. That is a different thing altogether. But that is only after the crystal has been purified. It is post-purification of crystal or post-purification of buddhi, further exercise. So then what happens? Supposing somebody has really worked hard in his life by doing sadhana of removing the mala or the tamasa from the activities, then what will happen? The thick mud is gone or is going. The straight dust is still there. Dust is Rajoguna, mud is Tamoguna. So mud is to be removed first. Moment the mud is removed, what happens? Suddenly the crystal starts reflecting a little bit of light. It is not as much as a pure crystal, but at least little bit of light. All of a sudden the person becomes more intelligent. In our common social parlance, he is very intelligent, he understands things faster. He is able to grasp the things much quicker. he has become a doctor, he qualified for the exam. All these statements indicate that the tamoguna is going down. But even though he is a doctor or as engineer or even a scientist or a prime minister or he's a big shot, he's a CEO, yet he's suffering from depression. He's suffering from, he's very angry person. He's very intelligent, but this doctor, once he becomes angry, what happens, sir? If he's intelligent, then why is he becoming angry? Because tamoguna is gone, so the light of consciousness got reflected. He became little intelligent than others, so he became a doctor. Fine, but rajoguna is still there. That is why the wavery mind is either putting him in depression or anxiety or overactivity or anger or greed. That means the dust particles, not the mud, but the dust particles are creating an issue now. This is called vikshepa. The tamoguna is responsible for the avarana, the dark, muddy thing. Tamoguna is the avarana. So first you start from there. Like while taking baths, when we are dirty, first we pour the water to remove the obvious dirt of the body, and then we start scraping at certain points because those are very sticky dots, rajoguna. When Rajoguna is removed with the help of mind and its control, sanyatendriyata, then what happens? The tamoguna is gone, the Rajoguna is going. Now, not only that the right reflects better, so the person becomes more intelligent, he becomes more poised, more calm, more serene, more equipoised, because now there is nothing that is disturbing him. Once these two activities have happened, the tamoguna is at the lowest, rajoguna is at the lowest, naturally the sattva-guna is at the highest. That is the time the crystal, the diamond called buddhi, starts shining. Now this is the minimum requirement for the onward journey from buddhi to the purusha. Why buddhi to the purusha? Because buddhi is the first manifestation of prakriti. You are now already withdrawing from the prakriti and you reached a point of mahat or the buddhi. From buddhi you are going to go forward. So the progression from buddhi to mahat. If this is the case, then can we say that a purified buddhi is purusha? In other words, mirror is reflecting the light and the light is the original source of light is light. Can we call the light in the mirror as sun or not? This is the philosophical question in 21st Sutra. If buddhi is samvedanakarini, what is samvedanakarini? We already saw that whenever we see anything for the perception, it is ultimately comes to the buddhi, and buddhi first becomes the respondent, samvedana. So she is called samvedana karini, but only samvedana is of no use in understanding. Once buddhi has samvedana, the consciousness gives pratisamvedana. So the purusha is pratisamvedaka. There is first sound made by the buddhi, and the echo comes from the consciousness and the perception happens. Buddhi alone is jada. Buddhi alone is part of prakriti. Prakriti is insentient. Howsoever nice, big, beautiful, whatever it may be, it cannot do anything. It cannot be perceived. It cannot be unless there is consciousness embedded in it. Unless consciousness responds to the sound of prakriti, no knowledge is possible. That is why buddhi is called samvedana karini, and the consciousness which replies to this particular thing is called counter respondent. Counter respondent is pratisamvedi. So consciousness or the Purusha or the Chaitanya is Pratisamvedi and Buddhi is Samvedanakarini. Now, they are so close to each other, then why they are not same? Why Buddhi itself is not considered as Atman, or why Buddhi is not called as Chaitanya? Why Buddhi is considered separate? There is a school of thought which says Buddhi is Atman. There is a school of thought, but it is refuted. Why? Because of the reasons. The first reason is Jnata Ajnata Vishayatvat Parinamini hi Buddhi. What it means is, when you are using your buddhi, right now you are using your buddhi to assimilate what I am talking. Right now, since you are assimilating what I am talking, if we presume that, that means you are not aware of your office. What it means? You always have compartmental awareness. If I am watching a movie, I am not aware of my distant relative. If I think of my relative, then I'm not aware of my office. Why this happens? Because Buddhi has a limitation of getting involved into a section or a compartment of a thing. At one go, I am not aware of everything in this world. Right now, I'm not aware of my daughter studying abroad because I'm talking to you. Moment the thought of my daughter came, my talking to you got disrupted for a millisecond. That means at any given point of time, buddhi vishaya can be ghatapatadi. Ghatapata means either you are in a ghata or you are in a pata. Either you are in a ghata, that is a ghata, which is the container of water, the pitcher, or pata is a cloth. You can either think of a cloth or you can either think of a pot. Ghata ya pata. You cannot be into both simultaneously. This is the limitation of buddhi. So jnata, ajnata, vishayatvata parinamini hi buddhi. As opposed to this, purusha vishayascha buddhi syat grahita agrahita na. What it means is consciousness doesn't have limitation of ghata and pata. It is conscious simultaneously of everything in the world. Now you will understand why we call certain things miraculous about these Jivan Muktas or the great sages. Swami Vivekananda in America, in one of the family where he was staying, it was a very big house. It had many, many bedrooms. Some 20 odd rooms were there. And it is a large mansion. So while talking in the drawing hall, Swamiji said, my pravachan time is coming close. Let me change and come. So he went for changing. He went on the left side through the veranda to change. Now what happened is, there was no way a person would have gone on the left side and come from the right side. The people in the drawing hall noted that Swamiji went from one side and came from another side, which was utterly impossible. You must have heard of many people simultaneously, the realized people talking about certain things happening far away from, which is called as clairvoyance. All this is possible because when you are on the higher and higher level of consciousness, you are able to perceive the things directly from the consciousness standpoint, not from the buddhi standpoint. So it is not limited to the place where only indriyas are acting. That is why it is called atindriya shakti. Beyond the indriyas also you are able to see. You don't require the medium of buddhi or the indriya to know a thing. For the sunlight to see where the sunlight is, the sunlight is everywhere. So for the sun, it doesn't have to take any specific effort to know what is happening where, because he is simultaneously illuminating, enlightening, everything. But a lamp in the house can only limitedly light the drawing room, not nothing beyond that. A lamp in the drawing room will not give you light in the bedroom also. Similarly, buddhi is restricted. That is the difference between, that is why buddhi is not purusha or the consciousness. Second thing is, buddhi works for purusha. What is the use of the buddhi? Only to reflect the consciousness. That means buddhi is for purushartha. So function, purpose, prayojan of buddhi is for consciousness. Then what is the purpose of consciousness? Consciousness has no purpose. That is another difference between the buddhi and the consciousness. Third important difference between buddhi and the consciousness or buddhi and the purusha is, buddhi is in different states, avastha, shant, ghor, moodha, depending upon which guna is predominant. If the moodha is predominant, the buddhi will have swoon, it will sleep. If buddhi is in a rajoguna avastha, it will be in a ghora avastha, shifting and chanting from each and every place, chanchalya. If it is in sattva guna, then it will be shanta. So Om Shanti 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 is for the buddhi's shanti, but shanti is an avastha, that means a guna. Purusha is guna rahita. So that is why there are no avasthas in Purusha. Purusha is sometimes ghor, sometimes mood. That doesn't happen because it is beyond gunas. Prakriti is nothing else but guna. We saw that Prakriti by itself is nothing but three gunas. If three gunas are there, one will always be predominant, others will be always there. There cannot be one single guna. Maximum that can happen is gunas can be in samyavastha, equality. Moment all the three gunas are equal, you can transcend the gunas. Once you transcend the gunas, then you are a consciousness or the purusha. And the purusha doesn't have any avastha. Because purusha is upadrashta of the gunas. Sun enlightens a thing on the earth, but sun is not the thing. Sun enlightens the stone, but sun is not the stone. Similarly, consciousness enlightens everything, but consciousness is not everything. So consciousness is upadrushta. So that means heat purusha does what is called as aupacharika grahana. Aupacharika grahana means just because of its close presence. Why did sun reflected its light in the mirror? Sun did not reflect the light. Just because the mirror was in the range of sunlight, it reflected the light. Sun had no intention. So it is aupacharika grahana. So if this is so, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, these 3 points are given to differentiate buddhi and the purusha. Why buddhi is not purusha? Then comes the question, if buddhi is not purusha, then is buddhi completely different from purusha? They give a proviso to that. Although buddhi is not purusha, buddhi is the closest to the purusha and is not considered much different than the purusha because it is Chetanavati. Chetanavati means the only and the only thing in the world that can come closest to the consciousness, that has ability to grasp the consciousness in its purity. The skin and the muscle and the bone and the stone, they cannot be close to the consciousness. They are far away from the consciousness. The closest thing to the consciousness, the one which can actually see the consciousness or one which has ability to see the consciousness is buddhi. So she is called Chetanavati. Because consciousness is reflected, in other words, mirror is closest to the light. The reflected light is not closest. Mirror is the closest because it is able to grasp the sun into it. So the sun inside the mirror is nothing else but sun only, light only. So from that angle, mirror is not sun. but the closest of the sun can be seen in the mirror. In that sense, mirror is closest to the sun. For that matter, if I don't see myself in the mirror, I will not come to know how I look. So for me to know how I look, who is helping me? The mirror is helping me. Similarly, for me to know my nature, it is the mirror or the buddhi that helps me. That is why buddhi is considered very close or almost approximate with the consciousness, provided it is in its original pristine pure form. Because in the sake of, in the case of evolution, you have come backward by Layavada, almost reaching Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva is the first manifested Tattva. Naturally, it is bound to be close to the Purusha. And that is why it is called Chiti Chayavati. Buddhi is called Chiti Chayavati. Chit Chayavati means what? Chit means consciousness, Chaya means shadow, the one who has a shadow of consciousness. In normal parlance in Advaita and in Adhyatma, Buddhi is called Hrudaya, Hrudguha, Hrudaya. Buddhi is not, the intelligence is not residing in brain. Brain is an organ. Not to consider much about it. Buddhi is the Hrudaya, which is called by Sufi as Dil. That is why a Sufi says, Nahi hai arsh. Arsh means Akash. Nahi hai arsh. That is consciousness. Nahi hai arsh. To arsh se kam bhi nahi hai. The Buddhi, though it is not consciousness, it is not much less than the consciousness because it is closest. Nahi hai arsh, to arsh se kam bhi nahi hai. Yahan nazil hue hai ayate zaman. Meaning what? This is the intelligence in which the consciousness has given its prescription. It has inscribed. So that is why Buddhi is equally important. Then comes the question that now we have seen what is Druk, we have seen what is Drushya. Now we want to come to the 21st mantra, which says Tad artha eva drushyasya atma. That means all this Drushya is for the sake of Purusha only. Now this is a very startling statement. We all think that this world is for me. And I'm indulging in it, I'm doing everything into it. We never ask a question that I have not created this, how it can be mine? I come here for 70, 80, 90 years, all right. Or maybe I'm coming again and again to this place in any form. But is this world created for me? Or is this world created by somebody for himself? The answer is Tad artha eva. For the sake of consciousness, Drushasya atma. The Drushya is for the sake of the consciousness, sir. You are not anywhere in the scene. You came in between and started thinking that I am the center of the creation and the creation is for me. That is called selfish attitude. Self, the real self, it is his Drushya. The false self, the Upadhi, is thinking that this Drushya is mine, which is not. That is what this sutra Patanjali Maharaj is telling us. It says Tad artha eva. Tad means, Tat means Purusha. And what is Drushya? Drushya is Bhoga or Apavarga. What is Bhoga? Bhoga is experience. Bhoga is experience. The actual definition of Bhoga is Sukha Dukkhatmaka Shabdadi Vishayakara Buddhi Vrittihi Bhogaha. Bhoga means. So now the question is, you see the Drushya, you claim you saw it. Because you claim you saw it, you have a choice of Anukula and Pratikula, liking and disliking, which leads to Dukkham and Sukham, which is because of your false Ahankara. which is called asmita. So whatever you try to see in drushya by putting you yourself in the center rather than the consciousness whose drushya this is, then it becomes pratyaya. Pratyaya means perception of the visible or the drushya by me, means asmita, and then creating sukha and dukkha. Then when I am creating sukha dukkha by presuming this drushya to be mine, consciousness is letting that happen by lending the consciousness light. The water of Ganga is flowing, pure water is flowing downstream. One man decided to take this particular water and water his land for the sake of crop. Now he cannot grow the crops without the water, but the water had no business in creating the crop. It was anyway flowing. So similarly, when through my asmita or ahankar, I am trying to take this drushya as mine, because of which the sukha dukkhas are getting created, in the whole process, consciousness is constantly present, because without that, this cannot happen. Yet, consciousness has no interest in what you are doing. This is called bhoga. And when you are not doing it, when you are not having ahankar, then what will happen? Drushya will be there. Drushya is not going to disappear. Gurudeva become Brahmavid, but nothing disappeared. The mountains were there, the Himalayas were there. That same Himalayas before his realization was still there, after his realization was still there. His view towards the drushya change, that is a different thing. But drushya did not go away. Now imagine somebody who doesn't have ahankara, but he's still alive. Something like Gurudeva. In that case, who is seeing the drushya? The consciousness is directly perceiving the drushya with the help of a medium called buddhi sthita in that particular person. And Gurudeva said, I have nothing to do with it. There is something called crystal called buddhi with my body. The body is not mine. The crystal is not mine. The buddhi is not mine. And it is seeing. So who is seeing? The consciousness is seeing. What? The drushyam. Through whom? Through me. That is why in one of the cryptic conversation in Hong Kong, Gurudeva said, because somebody pestered a question and asked Gurudeva repeatedly, are you Ishwara? Are you Ishwara? Gurudev avoided to the best possible extent, but then at last he said that yes, when the body and the mind becomes extremely pure, it gets possessed by the Lord. What he was trying to say is, this body of mine is not mind body. This is a body used by Ishwara. So Ishwara is residing in it, is working through this. All the Gita Jnana Yajna was Ishwar Karya. Why? Because Gurudev was no more existing. For us, we could see only Gurudeva. Gurudev himself had no existence of himself. It was Ishwara which was operating. So that is why in such cases, it is called apavarga. There is no bhoga. So Gurudev had no experience. Why? Experience is bhoga. Bhoga is from ahankar standpoint. And from ahankar standpoint, all vikaras are and sukha dukkhas are there. Since Gurudeva was not in the bhoga, he was in apavarga. That means witness and awareness of druk, consciousness. So he was not aware of this. Aware of the drushyam for the sake of consciousness is a different state of mind than being aware of the everything as a jiva or upadhi or ahankar kruta. So that means both bhoga and apavarga. Bhoga is getting involved into the world, apavarga becoming aware of the consciousness. The buddhi is into two phases. Either the buddhi goes into the vishaya, that is drushya, and starts experiencing bhoga, and that results into sukha dukkha, or the buddhi is in consciousness, that is called aware of consciousness, that is called apavarga. So buddhi can take you to bhoga, buddhi can take you to apavarga, that is awareness of. And when your awareness of consciousness develops, you become witness, drashta. You're just aware of what is happening. You are not into it. Gurudev was drashta of everything happening in the world, but he had nothing to do with it. A child's play is happening and the father is trying to participate. He's aware of what is happening. He participates, but he knows that I'm not a child. It is the same situation here. So, Bhokta Purusha Swarupa Avadharanam. Bhokta Purusha is consciousness. Swarupa Avadharan, awareness of his Swarupa. So, Bhog and Apavarga both are Buddhi Krutau. They are not Purusha Nishta. Purusha is neither involved in Bhoga nor involved in Apavarga. Sun is not involved in who is getting lighted and who is not. Also, he is not interested or involved in knowing that he is a sun. The one who is getting lighted by the sun might say that that is the sun and this is his light. But for the sun, he is not even aware that it is his light. But light is its nature. When it is your nature, you don't say it is me. You don't say it is my eye. It is your eye only. It is a part of you. So you are Anga Angi Sambandha. You are a part of you. Even that Anga Angi Sambandha also does not apply, because Anga Angi means you again have two into it. So the consciousness either can exist by himself or it can exist through the apparatus. Now, when consciousness helps in enlightening everything, it ultimately depends on, it is like electricity. How many watt bulb you will put depends upon you. Put a 10 watt bulb, the light will be very minimal. Put 100 watt maximum, put 10,000 watts, huge light. Now, is electricity interested in knowing which light you are putting? No. Put any light, sir, my job is to give you electricity. So the consciousness is constantly standing, giving the consciousness to all the things that are there in Prakriti or matter vestures, as Gurudeva calls it. Now what happens is, if your matter vestures are powerful enough to take the consciousness as much as possible, then you become more enlightened. So enlightenment is nothing else but a progressive procedure of removing the matter vesture so that you go closer to the electricity. Now, the electricity doesn't have any intention of manifesting because it is beyond manifestation. In the wake of electricity, whosoever comes manifests. So presently we are bulbs of different wattage. Somebody's wattage is 10, somebody's is 15, somebody is 50. A person with 10 wattage calls 20 wattage very intelligent. So somebody comes and tells you how nice you speak, how much knowledge you have deep study of Yoga Shastra, etc. Sir, a 10 watt bulb is talking to a 20 watt bulb, nothing more than that. What is more important is electricity. And to approach the electricity, you have to increase your wattage. When the wattage reaches maximum, that means you're almost reaching the maximum capacity of electricity, you become electricity. So the whole sadhana is to increase the wattage in you. And the wattage is ability to reflect, take the electricity inside you. The wattage will increase only when the sattva guna increases. Increment of wattage is increment of sattva guna. And that is why the development that is expected in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Atha Yoganushasana, the person who has already done Chitta Shuddhi and he is now trying to take control of his Vikshepa, for them this Shastra is there. That is why Atha word is there, Atha Yoganushasana. So when we have really worked hard on removing the Mala and then we are trying to control our Vikshepa, that is the time Vikshepa control is nothing but increasing your wattage. Every time you increase the wattage, new area gets lightened, new things are seen, That is why in samadhi, when the wattage goes up, when the buddhi pragalbha becomes pragalbha, when the consciousness starts more and more reflecting, new experiences, new dimensions are opened up. So yogi keeps on moving from higher and higher realms of consciousness. That means higher and higher awareness. And this higher awareness is not available for the normal people. So they call this as miraculous power. There is nothing miraculous in this world. Miracle is something which we don't understand. Existence has nothing to do with whether you understand or not. So we do not understand how you can be at two places at the same time, because we cannot be. So it is miraculous. For those who know how to do the manifestation, they can be at three different places. You can listen and hear anything which is miles away from you. That is possible because then you go on the higher realms of consciousness. So that is why crossing the boundaries of different levels of consciousness, increasing the wattage of your buddhi tattva, becoming more and more sattva guna bharita, and that is how you keep on expanding your consciousness. This entire world is nothing else but an opportunity given for the Prakriti to keep on evolving so that higher and higher consciousness is obtained, so that ultimately you reach a point where consciousness becomes so large that you become Purusha or the consciousness itself. Once you become consciousness, you are no more Prakriti. If you are no more Prakriti, there is no question of you coming here and doing something here, because you are out of this world, out of this Prakriti. So coming into the Prakriti, evolving to the further greater consciousness, ultimately reaching the consciousness, becoming the consciousness, be consciousness, and out of Prakriti, again become Prakriti. So this is what is called as Anadikala Chakra Parivartana. This is going on. All the bad people, good people, nice people, dirty people, terrorists, everybody has to go ultimately to the consciousness, whether he wishes or not. It is not a question of his wish. The very fact of the creation indicates, because first of all, creation is not yours. So the purpose of creation, you cannot decide. Purpose of creation is a Leela of a Bhagavan, where this creation will undergo the tumult of further expansion of consciousness, ultimately reaching to the consciousness. So that is the reason why at all, once you reach consciousness, again the Prakriti is there, because having Prakriti is the Leela of Bhagavan. Prakriti itself is the potentiality that is existing, which actually operates because of consciousness. Some people say that because it operates under consciousness, it is separate from consciousness. Some people say that no, this power of expression is inherent in the consciousness. That is why the consciousness is already in there in the, so it is called as a Shiva and a Shakti. So Shakti is inherent part of the Shiva. Shiva, when it is not exhibiting the Shakti, it is standing in the form of pure Shiva. There is nothing around, only consciousness. The day when he decides to exhibit the Shakti, then the Shakti unfolds and forms different gross manifestations. So it is like exactly the way Orni, the spider, the spider throws the web from the mouth and then takes it back into his mouth again. So this is how tad artha eva drushyasya atma. So when apavarga and bhoga both are not there, then the prakriti or the drushya dissolves. That is why if you ask a question, where is the person, where is Santa Jnaneshwar, where is Ramakrishna Paramahansa, where is Gurudev now? You cannot point out at any place and say, here he is. Why? Here means there is a space and that direction and time. Space and time. Dik and Kala. Consciousness is beyond Dik and Kala. So where is Gurudeva? Gurudeva is beyond Dik and Kala. Means where? In consciousness. Where is consciousness? Everywhere. Everywhere means where? Right here. That means Gurudeva is where? Right here. In what? Whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever, because consciousness is pure. And that means any pure act that is happening from your side. Pure act means sattvic act. In fact, so much sattvic that you are not even aware of sattvika guna. Whenever that happens, be sure it is nothing else but Gurudeva doing it. Why? Because then you and Gurudeva are not different. That is how tad artha eva drushyasya atma is done. Now the question is, If one person realizes this and becomes Purusha or Purusha Khyati, then only for him the world dissolves. What about others? People like us. Gurudev went to his abode. Where are we? We are still here and we will be reborn. Then what happened? For him, the world disappeared. For us, it is still there. How come? That is why Patanjali, the Yoga Sutra or the Sankhya Tattvajnan says, Purushas are multiple, not one. The one like Gurudeva who realized the Purusha Khyati went. So for him, there is no Prakruti. But my Purusha is still in this Prakruti. That is why my Purusha Khyati hasn't happened. Gurudeva's Purusha Khyati happened. That means there are multiple Purushas. This is a drastically different statement than the Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta says consciousness, Atman is one. It is residing in everybody. You are Baddha, that is different thing, but you are consciousness only. But in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, it says that the consciousness are multiple. Purushas are many. So individually, each person will try to have the Purusha Khyati and then go out of this Prakriti. Others will remain. That is the reason why Prakriti will always remain. Prakriti is not Santa, it is Ananta. It will keep on there. It will keep on functioning. Why? Because some Purushas will be always entangled with the Prakriti. That's why it is Anadi and Ananta. In Pralaya also, it will be drawn back in the seed form, but with all the impressions. So again, when the new world will be formed, new universe, it will be again projected outwards, but it will never vanish. Prakriti never vanishes. So the most important difference between Advaita and Sankhya is Prakriti and Purusha. These are two independent entities which carry on forever. Now, when we say independent, not meaning in that sense, they are separate entities, not independent, separate entities, because Prakriti is dependent on Purusha. Prakriti cannot do anything without Purusha. Prakriti is insentient. Purusha is needed for the Prakriti to work, but they are separate entities. They work in conjunction, Sanyoga. In fact, their Sanyoga is the reason for creation of Prakriti. The time you reach to a place where you can see them separately, Purusha Khyati is done, you have attained Kaivalyam, and you are no more in Prakriti, you are in the consciousness. This is described in the 22nd mantra, Krutartham Pratinashtam, the one who has become Krutartha, one who is able to see the Purusha and Prakriti separate, which is Kaivalyam. Krutartham Pratinashtam, Api Anashtam Tat Ananya Sadharanatva. That means for the others who doesn't have the Kaivalya or Purusha Khyati, the Prakriti still remains. But for those who are able to see it separately, it does not remain. So this sutra brings us to a little comparative study between Vedanta, Sankhya, and Shaiva Tattvajnana. Our intention while studying Patanjali Yoga Sutra is not to do the parade of all the sutras and just take the textual meaning and go away. The study, if it is done, it has to be deep so that we understand fundamental concept and work on our mind so that we can do some acharana out of it. That is why we are trying to see comparatively other philosophies also, so that it becomes more firm in our mind. In the next session, we will try to see how this concept of consciousness or the Chaitanya or the Atma and Purusha and the Shaiva Siddhanta, how do they come close or how do they differ? How is the difference only superficial? That is what we will try to see with reference to 22nd mantra. And then thereafter we will try to see all this is happening because of a word called avidya or ajnana. This avidya we have heard hundreds of times, but we don't know where precisely is the location of this avidya. From where did it come? Where was she beforehand? Where did she go when she's sublated? All that is a discussion of 23rd and the 24th sutra, which we shall do in the next session. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay. We'll wait and see if any sadhaks have any questions.
Hari Om, Sanjay, Rajendran here. Hari Om, can you hear me, please?
Yes, Rajendran.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Acharya Shankara Bhagavat Padhar's one Eka Shloki is there. You, I know you are aware of that. This is very much is in agreement with our Drisha Viveka. That means, can you, if possible, in the next class, spend some time on that, explaining in detail, because it's very brief in one slok, Eka slok. Because it will take some time, so it is better to explain it in the next class.
Hari Om. We do it. It is very relevant also. So we will do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji.
Hari Om.
We learned, at earlier stages also. So there is a universal consciousness, and then there is the individual level. So Mahat and Buddhi at universal level, and then you have an individual Buddhi. Now, in this explanation of the gunas, right? So today you talked about removing layers from a crystal. Now, perhaps that's like an analogy, because earlier we studied that the gunas, today you talked about sattva being like a crystal, or some entity being covered by mud and clay or dust, right? Which is, but earlier also we've studied that, the three states of the guna, right? So Rajo is movement, Tamo is stability, is just in one place, and the balance of this results in sattva. So just a little clarification on the two concepts, please.
We have to, it's a very, very important subtle question. I really appreciate that you put it. Tamoguna is to be reduced, Rajoguna is to be reduced, Sattva-guna is to be increased. This is what our teaching normally tells us, which is correct. Now let us take an example in a quantitative manner. I have, say, 70 Tamoguna, 25 Rajoguna, and 5 Sattva-guna. Now what will happen in my case is, because my Tamoguna dominance is much, my whole act will be dominated by Tamoguna. Now I will reduce my Tamoguna from 75 and I'll try to bring it down and down. Now the question is, moment the Tamoguna starts coming down from 75 to 70, that 5 has to be filled up by somebody else, because the whole total has to be 100 always. Now this filling of the second one can be either by Sattva-guna or by Rajoguna. Normally it happens that Rajoguna fills it up, because second person standing in the queue is Rajoguna after Tamoguna. Now when that happens, then it becomes a state of 70 Tamoguna, 20, instead of 25, it becomes 25 becomes Rajoguna, and Sattva-guna remains where it is. Now imagine this dynamic equilibrium going in the similar manner. In the beginning, as we start increasing Sattva-guna, say let us say Sattva-guna has gone beyond 60, 70. So such a person will be always involved into the activities of Sattva-guna, and he will use Rajoguna and Tamoguna to the bare minimum. Let us take example of Gurudeva. Gurudeva used a Tamoguna for the sleep. How much was he sleeping? Just 2 hours. What is the meaning of it? The meaning is he needed Tamoguna, but a very, very little Tamoguna. Yeah, he needed Rajoguna for what? For getting out, moving, taking the flight, taking the train, whatever, going and speaking, and all Rajoguna. How much he was needing? Maybe another 10% he was needing. Rest was, what was he doing? Rest, he was in Sattva Guna so that he was able to produce prolific things one after the other. It was all Sattva Guna. Now, this was the use of gunas. The only difference in case of Gurudeva was he was using the gunas. He was not prey or a target of the gunas. He was using them as three slaves. We are slaved by the gunas. He was using the gunas. That is a separate topic of discussion. It is called Badhita Anuvritti, but that we will discuss separately. Now, imagine when Sattva Guna increases, what happens is, not only the quantity of the gunas come down, the need of the gunas also come down, sir. So when I am into a full-fledged Rajoguna activity, there is a dancer dancing on the floor. How much is the Rajoguna? Huge quantum of Rajoguna. And there is a sadhu who is trying to walk in the forest. He also needs Rajoguna, but comparatively he needs little Rajoguna. So now when you are actually in the state of different types of samadhis, you are sitting at one place and trying to go into the samadhis. How much Rajoguna you require, sir? Very little. And you are into the samadhi avastha, or you are trying to get into samadhi avastha, tamoguna is almost negligible. So what is there? Only sattva guna. Now the question is it 10 tamoguna, 10 rajoguna and 80 sattva guna? What has happened is overall quantum of that 100% at itself still remains 100%, but the size has come down. The gunas have shrunk. The gunas proportion agreed, but it has shrunk. So in shrinking, what happens? First of all, the gunas are required in very little quantity. Why? You're not into this world anymore. You've forgotten your own body. So your Rajoguna requirement, Tamoguna requirement is very, very less. So you are operating on very minimal quantum of gunas itself. So it is like a person who is eating a full plate of food for his hunger. But when the hunger is not at all there, the plate becomes very small. Now, same thing happens for the yogi when he reaches to the closer to the buddhi. That means closer to this asampradnat samadhi. Now, in that case, what happens? Whatever little sattva, tamoguna and rajoguna he has, his sattva guna requirement also starts becoming less and less. He doesn't need tamoguna, he doesn't need rajoguna, and the sattva guna requirement also is for what? Enlightenment. No, but he's already reaching that, so sattva guna requirement also becomes less. Now this less becomes equal and he's out. I hope I am able to explain what I was trying to say. The gunas, initially we increase sattva guna because we want to reach that destination. See, we needed a torch, a stick, and a footwear to reach a station. Now what happened? Footwear is required because there were a lot of thorns. When the thorns are not there, you can throw the footwear. So tamoguna becomes less. As you go further, the wild animals are no more there. So you throw the stick also. You need only torch. But when you reach there, the torch is also not required because now you reach the sun. So you throw the torch. Similarly, the tamoguna, which has already become less, rajoguna, which is negligible, sattva guna, which was so much dominant earlier, has started becoming less. It is not becoming less for any other purpose, but it is becoming less for the dissolution purpose. So the sattva guna comes, and then what happens? 0.1 tamoguna, 0.1 rajoguna. Suddenly the sattva guna also becomes same. When that proportion becomes same, but in a very minimal quantity, the total quantum of three gunas is traceable, only traces. In the trace again 100% is maintained, but the equanimity gets achieved. So this is quality versus quantity, and the size versus the expansion of gunas. Because more the gunas expanded, you can consciously say, like in our case, tamoguna is this much, rajoguna is this much. Imagine at the origin, it is in a very small size. So having equanimity of the three becomes easy there. That is the explanation. Hari Om.
Hari
Hari
Om.
Om, that was a fantastic explanation, Sanjay ji. Thank you very much. It is well understood. Thank you.
Sanjay ji. So I understood this, clarified very much the size, explanation that from the source it's very small, and then as we become humans, it becomes much larger. So that is clear. Just my what I was trying to reconcile today is that my earlier understanding was that the balance of Rajo and Tamo, the more they get balanced, the Sattva increases. In the Vedantic thing, we talk about 10%, 20%, 80%. I'm not sure whether it is the same analogy in Yoga Sutras, because here it's about balance. So when the balance is, at 100%, then Sattva Guna, I would presume, is the only Guna that exists. So is it a question of balance, or, and the reconciliation with today, I know you were trying to explain that on the clay and that, one is a question of balance, the other is a concept of removal. So I'm trying to reconcile these two thoughts.
The removal is a technical word we use. You can never remove gunas as long as you are in Prakriti, because Prakriti is gunas. And if you are in Prakriti, there cannot be 100% removal. Again, as I told you, you can have quantity or quantum or magnitude of gunas will differ from person to person. But if you are in Prakriti, you ought to have gunas, all the three. You ought to have gunas. The one who has Jivan Mukta, when he becomes Videha Mukta, when he leaves his body, at that time he leaves gunas also. But till the time he is in Prakriti, even though he is released from the gunas, he has to use the gunas, because still his body is there. He is in Prakriti. Different fact that he knows how to use gunas. That's a different story altogether. So what is happening is, when we say Guna Samyavastha, see, Guna Samyavastha you can do. Let us say you have a very predominant Rajas in you. And now you think that, no, let me do one thing. Let me bring it to exactly 33.33, so that others I will increase 33 and 33. That doesn't happen, sir, because Rajoguna is so predominant that you will have to make an active effort to make other guna dominant. So initially it is the question of stop. It is like you press at one point, the other thing is popping up. You press at another point, this thing is popping up. This is what our life is, day-to-day life. When we go to the process of Mala and Vikshepa and forward towards the meditation, in meditation, first of all the three gunas are in a minimalistic form. They are not so dominant at all. They are still there, but they are not dominant at all. So imagine there are three small children and they're trying to create trouble for you. You can press all the three at once because they are small. Now imagine three giant people are there and they are making so much of dancing around. You can't control them. So for that, what you do, you control one so that the other will help the third one. This all exercise is for the people where the gunas are conspicuously dominating. A person who is a sadhaka, the one who is studying Yoga Shastra, one who is sitting for the Sampradnat Samadhi, is not an ordinary individual. He is an individual who has already brought his gunas under terrific control. They are still existing, agreed, but then they are existing in a dwarf form, in a mini form. So it becomes easier for him. Now, only question is, he puts his tamoguna to the lowest, rajoguna to the lowest, and normally plays with sattva-guna because entire samadhi is sattva-guna exercise. But then when he reaches to the upper level of sattva-guna, he realizes that he doesn't require sattva-guna also. Tamoguna and rajoguna, he doesn't require. That is why he's sitting quiet at one place. He's not even aware of his body. How can the rajoguna work? So it is at a minimal, at least breathing is going on. So rajoguna is there. So that is why Tamoguna, Rajoguna is already in a flickering last flame form. Sattva-guna, which was so dominant, now it is becoming useless. So it starts diminishing. While coming down, the mercury is coming down, Sattva-guna is coming down. Suddenly it matches Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Sir, the job is done, he's gone. This is how the process is. And when this happens, it happens. How? Guru knows about it. And in which moment, nobody can say. That is why none of the saints or the Jivan Muktas have ever told you that on so and so date, at so and so time, at so many seconds, I got my enlightenment. Nobody is able to say that. Why? Because you just go to that side. You flip the whole thing. Imagine such a massive event of getting out of the Prakriti and directly merging into the consciousness. The consciousness being all-knowing cannot function as Prakriti-bound creature. You want to become consciousness, you have to be consciousness. You cannot become consciousness. You have to be consciousness. And becoming is the only thing which you can describe in words or time, etc. Imagine going beyond time and talking about time. Is it possible? No. So this is how the Sattva Raja Doma equipoise gets achieved at that higher altitude. Hari Om.